Today, I talked to Jennifer Clemente, whose career spans from the battlegrounds of the Balkan Wars to the forefront of technology storytelling.
B92 was like raising the flag of, hey, we're European, we have a voice and we need to get this out. We're not going to be isolated with this country because of this leader. So we're going to do what we can to share what's really going on here in Serbia, former Yugoslavia.
From reporting in conflict zones to navigating the world of AI at both IBM and VMware, Jennifer's journey is a story of evolution and adaptability.
I've been part of this discussion since 2017, 2018, when I was with IBM. I thought that was now part of the vernacular. So I realized that we just can't take our foot off the acceleration pedal. We still have to keep driving that conversation.
Learn from Jennifer how top marketers create AI-assisted, hyper-personalized content that truly resonates. We'll also guide you through sparking discussions at your organization on ethically implementing AI and starting your own AI council. We talk about GPTs, the latest AI tools, and talk about who you should be following to keep up with this rapidly evolving world. This episode's packed with essential tips, and it's one you definitely don't want to miss. I wanted to chat with you about the work that you've been doing with the Marketing AI Council that was kind of born out of your work at VMware. But before we jump into that, I saw that your journey began as actually a foreign correspondent during the Balkan Wars. And I just wanted to understand how that experience shaped your perspective on the power of storytelling, because it seems like storytelling is very passionate to you in all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, not only storytelling, but the way to actually tell a story. So back in Serbia, back in the early 90s, the then government run by Slobodan Milosevic was restricting independent journalist voices. So the only kind of, way to get stories out was really through the state-run media. And so journalists had to come up with very clever ways to get the other side of the story out. So George Soros sponsored a satellite link for internet. I mean, this is way back in the day. So journalists had a way to get their stories out during the war. So
they didn't have Starlink,
yeah,
or
Starlink. So then this organization called B92 formed, which was basically a radio station, which, funny enough, the whole content of the music was house and techno, because that was sort of the music of the young people, the progressive people. They really wanted to align with Europe and to show everybody that they are European. And it was also to kind of counter the cultural trends at the time, which was like turbo folk, the sort of like kind of nationalistic folk music with like Casio music underneath. It was awful, but it was kind of and the video production was very disturbing. I mean, it would show like, young people with machine guns and with army gear. It was a total propaganda machine. So B92 was like raising the flag of, hey, we're European, we have a voice and we need to get this out. We're not going to be isolated with this country because of this leader. So we're going to do what we can to share what's really going on here in Serbia, former Yugoslavia. So I was lucky enough to be there at that time as a journalist covering the war and the tangential issues around the region. And so I got involved with B92. I helped out a lot of journalists access internet through different means. And it just kind of blossomed from there. Finally, like a real internet provider came into the country. So we started a blog for journalists. So it was just a really poignant way of saying, okay, there's always going to be a story, but how does the story get out? And so really looking at the role of technology became really important for all of us. And that really inspired me to keep going with a technology journalism career. And then also not only covering software and internet, but also how do you use it and how can you use it in disruptive ways, good disruptive ways, I'd say. And that carries on to today.
Yeah, so much is talked about the centralizing factor in technology, especially now with all the giant companies, but people tend to forget how decentralizing it was in the beginning and getting, especially state-controlled media and getting the message out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's where it came from. I remember when I was in college and looking at the whole fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of communism and learning how even like very early iterations of communication technology was kind of pivotal in helping people get the word out from a really grassroots perspective. And just the innovative ways that humans have to communicate has always been interesting, starting from, way back when to the rise of
Absolutely.
AI, which is where we are today.
Yeah, I think the invention of the story is one of the greatest things that humans ever invented. It spans times and uh, really is kind of one of the things that I think sets us apart. So you've been over the last 2 decades, you've told stories about technology's transformative power. What do you think is the most impactful story you've ever told over those past 2 decades?
About technology's impact.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, it's not about the impact, but the who's involved. I think the narrative had to really shift from technology being guided from one demographic to empowering more people. So I feel like the most impactful project I've ever done was being part of the Women Leaders in AI recognition program,
Okay.
which really looked at women who were spearheading AI projects from their lines of business, whether they were, coming from health, the health side or accountancy, and just helping to shape AI so it's more inclusive and it really benefits more people. So that's a really recent example. I would say that I'm really stunned by till still today, and seeing how um, women leaders of AI just like really changed the whole, I think, approach to AI from being like only engineers and data scientists, this kind of wider body of people and really more inclusive, which is really necessary when you're talking about shaping a technology that impacts every facet of life.
Absolutely. I think AI definitely needs the opinions of more than just the data science and the engineers.
Yeah,
uh,
looking at the board configuration of OpenAI, I mean, it was like the same story there. I'm like, oh, look, they chose a bunch of white dudes. Wait, so,
yeah, with the
so look,
new board.
yeah, that was really disappointing for me personally to see that.
Yeah, it was. I still am curious to understand what caused the kerfuffle. I know there's a lot of speculation out there, but at the end of the day, it seems like the business and the automation and won out, as opposed to any ethical concerns.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the problem I'm seeing. I thought there was just so much noise we made around ethical AI, the need for ethical AI. I mean, I've been part of this discussion since 2017, 2018, when I was with IBM. I thought that was now part of the vernacular. So I realized that we just can't take our foot off the acceleration pedal. We still have to keep driving that conversation everywhere. So.
Absolutely. I mean, because especially when you're talking about the use of AI and just with like in marketing in general. I mean, marketing at its core is persuasion and having some sort of ethical around how it's used, and that is going to be important. So at VMware, you were really deeply involved with the Marketing AI Council and still are. What how is AI reshaping just different marketing strategies, especially in like large enterprises?
I mean, its impact is starting to be felt. I think it's just, I think it's creating just a different mindset where, everyone's like, oh, we have to plan for the future, but not really knowing what the future looks like. So I think it's just creating more pressure there. So for example, I used to call myself a futurist. Now I call myself a nowist.
Okay. What do you mean
So
by that?
that means that everything is happening now, everything, everywhere, all at once, really. I mean, that movie was kind of a sign of the times. So I think rather than looking out the next 5 years, I think companies just have to go, no, we need to do this now. We're going to get left behind. So I think for the marketing organization, marketing tends to run really fast and tends to be on the bleeding edge of things. And so I think it was natural, at least at VMware, that marketing sort of saw the opportunity and said, hey, we need to hey, let me invite people together to see what we can do with this and create a council. So it wasn't surprising that marketing was the first to go to start this. And at the same time, the IT organization was creating their own policies. So I think that it's just reshaping marketing in a way that they realize they have to run faster, but to not break things, which is what happens when you run fast. So not failing alone, I think, has been a good ethos to live by. And so that is a call to action to create that council. That's not just marketing, but you also bring in, finance and legal and HR. You have other voices in your council that can really help shape that perspective while you're running fast, because marketing loves to take risks, and that's why I love marketing and communications. But we definitely need the guidance of other wise folks in the council. So I think it's helped marketing, at least of VMware, be a little more interdisciplinary. And like, they invited me in as a communications person, and then they had other folks from other lines of business, which was really wonderful.
So, when you're talking about AI, especially in large organizations, in my experience, you have two camps. You have, people that are really excited. This is what I'm going to do with it, and then you have, oh, this is going to take our job. Oh, this is going to be a huge security, privacy. And I'm sure at a large organization, you have people in both sides of those camps. How do you? And one of the things that I've noticed too is while marketing and certain departments, understand their need for it, really a lot of CIOs are looking at this as a company wide thing. So how do you kind of have those discussions so that both you can, run fast, but like you said, not break things, not, jeopardize privacy, security? Uh, how have those conversations gone?
Well, you have to have those conversations. I think just having a multitude of channels to capture those conversations. So you have, look, we had a weekly meeting, or we still have weekly meetings, actually. And so making sure that all voices are heard and represented. And then the Slack channel also captures uh, information and other points of view as they're happening. So I think it's just keeping that broad lens open and making sure you capture the inputs from many channels, and having representation on the other AI council from the C-suite lens is also really helpful. So we're not just doing things in a vacuum. But I can't answer that question honestly. It's a process, I would say. But I think that to not experiment and to not try and to not give people an opportunity to embrace the technology in a managed, governed way is a big mistake. So I think a good organization has to hold those 2 points of view, has to have
Mhm.
that care and consideration for privacy, security, ethics, and also has to have an openness to experimentation, because to not do that is going to set them back.
Yeah, you have to be experimenting in marketing, 100%, finding out what message, what resonates. And right now, it's not about, creating a blog post. It's about creating hundreds of blog posts, about creating content, um, which in marketing requires a lot of people.
Well, it also starts from creating educational opportunities, creating learning opportunities for marketers and for everybody in the organization. So that's the primary thing. You can't really get use cases off the ground if your employees don't even know how to use the technology or don't have access to it. And you also need guiding principles. You need, for an ethical framework, you need your guidelines for writing or using Gen AI. So it really starts with those foundational pieces before setting people loose.
And how did this kind of come about? Was this more of a grassroots effort? Was this more of like a kind of top down? Was it kind of, yeah, how did it come about?
From what I know, and I got involved a couple months in, but it first started when one of our marketing leaders, Jessica Ferreira, Gen AI had just come out, a year ago, I think in January. She sent out an email to other marketers saying, "Hey, do you want to get together to start working, seeing what we could do with this and get a pilot underway?" So they quickly assembled, got some really enthusiastic, passionate folks together, and then they got a Jasper pilot off the ground. So pretty
Okay.
early on, and then it just grew. And then I got involved from the comms side, and then we started a pilot with Writer AI, which I got to manage, and just kept going. So from January until just recently, it's been ongoing and has achieved, I'd say, quite a lot. I can give you the rundown of specifics. Um, they did 18 pilots actually across different areas. And of
So
course,
you rolled out 18 different services or tried different
I,
AI tools.
throughout
Okay.
marketing primarily, and then I ran kind of a general pilot in communications.
So you mentioned Writer and Jasper, but what were some of the other tools that kind of maybe didn't make the cut but were interesting?
So we had managed pilots. We were approved to use Jasper and Writer. They had to go through a strict, qualification process to make sure they were
Yeah.
safe to use. So those were sanctioned tools. So we only talked about sanctioned tools. Honestly, there was an acknowledgement that ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, Inflection AI with Pi are all useful to play with, but more on your own volition. So we weren't encouraged to use ChatGPT to write first drafts, but you could play with it, you could try it out, but you could check things and do research. But really, to do the actual building of content for external use, we that's why we had those pilots set up with Jasper and Writer for security, honestly.
Got it. Just security. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've definitely seen is that um, really, really locking down what it has access to is really important for a lot of the enterprises.
Very important. At the same time, we all on our own, we were always saying, hey, I got to try Claude when Claude rolled out. I got to try Claude this weekend, and then we could share our experiences with the council, on a Slack channel. And then we would just sort of compare. Like, I used it for one thing, I used Google Bard for the other. So it was a really great way to take this sort of heavy burden off any one person to try everything with all the tools. We could sort of say, well, I tried this, you tried that, and it would add to that collective body of knowledge. But my personal favorite, I was really struck by Pi AI by Inflection. So I started using that for personal projects, and then eventually the head of our podcast, the CIO exchange, he ended up doing an interview with Pi AI for the podcast, which I think was a really great example of innovation.
Excellent. I haven't heard of Pi AI. What's it? What is it? What does it do?
So Pi AI really envisions itself, or Inflection envisions Pi AI as a personal assistant, therapist, strategic advisor. So it has a real conversation, I'd say, tone, and it's a little sassy, and it really feels like you're speaking to a very well-versed, therapeutically minded coach.
Okay.
So I find it to be really fun to play with. So I'll spend like an hour a week just kind of playing with different things. But I notice with Pi, I'm having these long conversations about ancient history and mythology and dreams and consciousness. So I try to use it for that kind of thing, just to test out its abilities to engage. And I'm extremely impressed. I am. And then Bard. Bard is also useful. I think the YouTube link, you can actually put in a YouTube video and ask questions about the content of the video. I find that to be really useful too. And then chat,
Excellent.
of course, it's becoming more multimodal. So now you can use voice with it. I've been using it to create images for a while, and it's kind of a standard go-to. So having other passion and creative projects in my field, I tend to use these tools for experimentation.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about having conversations about things like ancient history or things that, you kind of go in those, it used to be like the Google rabbit holes. Now you can kind of have these conversation rabbit holes with something like Pi. That's
Yeah, no,
interesting.
it's pretty amazing, and I really enjoyed the CIO Exchange podcast. So I mentioned that Yadine Porter de Leon, member of the council, founding member of the council, had Pi AI as a podcast guest, speaking about different aspects of ethical AI, and so it was about AI on AI, kind of a meta conversation, and we found it to be extremely thoughtful, articulate, well versed, and really delightful.
Yeah, the capacity for especially the current versions of LLMs to be able to build narratives, especially is really interesting. And you talk a lot about the importance of building narratives in tech communication. What are like some of the key elements that when creating a compelling tech story, how do you weave these into your work, and do you have any like good prompts to share of how you do that?
Weaving AI, so
Just
generative.
weaving, yeah, like kind of how do you build narratives in
Everyone.
tech communication? Because that's sometimes, using the product, or, how this product is going to, help solve a problem, or, help make like a vitamin or a pill, right? So
Well,
how do you tell that narrative?
the ironic thing is, and this isn't really ironic, this is really wonderful, is that you really want to start from having the LLM or having the tool take the perspective of the persona that you're trying to reach. Well, first of all, you could even ask, well, what persona is going to be most open and receptive to this product, message, solution, event? And then from there, you can really kind of tap into who the persona is. Usually, a CIO, data scientist, a CEO, solution architect, right? So that's really interesting that that's the starting point. You are a name the persona, design a X, Y, Z that meets this person's needs or addresses their pain points. So that's probably my best suggestion, is really drill down into the persona that you want the tool to take.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I actually just had a YouTube video that I created. It's called the Persona Architect, to really put in there for different content that I'm creating, different marketing campaigns for different clients that can help brainstorm different personas. Because if you can make the message speak, and what resonates with them, what their goals, their aspirations, what are challenges for them. It creates more impactful marketing content.
Yeah, and another aspect of Jasper, for example, is you can train Jasper on the tone of voice of, say, an executive. If you're writing bylined content, you can take another piece of content that was authored for them or that they wrote, say the CEO of your company, plug it in, and the tool, or Jasper in this case, would learn the vernacular, the tone of voice, the kind of the structure of the way this author has written, and it will imitate or generate copy that's resonant with that, which I think is also very useful.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see a lot of these different tools having a lot more context to be able to add as kind of defaults for things like brand voice, voice of the customer, to kind of keep a consistent uh, output. So, for instance, one of on the tool that I use, I have a little do not use words. Like, I don't want to use synergy. I don't want to use some of these like kind of cringe buzzy words. But I think that's one thing that when using ChatGPT, especially if you've only used it a couple of times, they may seem pretty vanilla or boring. But when you really use something like Jasper that can really get more context about you, those responses become
Yeah, and
much better.
it allows you to train it, so you can have your knowledge base, you can have your blogs, everything. You can feed it a lot of content for context and tone, and you'll you know give it a few iterations, but it'll keep things very consistent, which I enjoy. And you can always tell if somebody's been using ChatGPT because you see Realm. I keep saying Realm is the new Pivot. Remember doing pivot, digital transformation pivot? Now it's Realm.
Yes, I keep getting, we're going to delve into the realm. I'm like, who speaks like that? Like, I had to add both of those to my do not say words.
Yeah, it's funny, and then you have the emojis, the emoji landscape. Every bullet point is an emoji, so
Yeah,
you know what you're up to.
exactly.
You can't hide the rules of this tool.
Exactly. I think that's a really good discussion though, because when you're trying to create marketing tech, especially in B2B software, you're trying to highlight the voice of the customer, and you want to make sure that that voice still remains authentic and impactful. But how do you continue to really do that where just AI data driven strategies are more predominant, especially in marketing agencies? Like, the data is telling us this thing, you have AI generated content. How do you stay authentic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the voice of customer programs that actually seek to capture the authentic customer voice are going to be more important now than ever, or capturing user experience. I mean, that's something I'm really passionate about, is really going and talking to customers, getting their stories, understanding the way they speak about their problems, tracking their trajectory to success, even their roadblocks, what things failed and how they overcame failure. Those are really critical things to capture through video. And then you have that in a transcript, and then you can bring that into your AI generating process, right? So you just want to make sure, as the human supervisor, that AI is not adding words, taking words away, adding different meanings. So you really become the supervisor of your co-pilot. But again, as I was saying, there's still a large opportunity for organizations to go and capture customer voices, verbatims and whatnot.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that more authentic customer stories, conversations like these, having those are going to become more and more important, just given how easy it is now to create all different types of content and
Yeah, like the
stories.
rule is the human is the source, right? The human voice should be the source of all things. So I would caution organizations, especially content marketing organizations, from generating scripts for their executives or for customers or influencers that are generated by AI too much. I'd say be very careful, because then you'll get into that trap of like using AI generated words to feed your scripting material for your subjects, and so you're not allowing them to speak from their own authentic voice. So that's the thing.
Absolutely, it's
And less of that.
yeah, you definitely don't want to use your responses, or at least very sparingly, of what gets output, and then it starts training. You start to end up having the Xerox effect, where you keep doing the original and just it's a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox.
Yeah, but for generating an outline, that I think it's perfectly valid to do that. Maybe sort of setting up a flow, taking away just that repetitive, like the writing that you need to do to get things started. I think it's valid to use it that way.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about your writing process. Do you start with like having, here this write an outline? Do you do each section? Do you have it kind of do a first draft and go back and forth? Like, what are some writing tips when actually using AI?
Yeah, so I usually start with some source documentation, a white paper, an existing blog, a transcript, and then I will see what the first draft looks like, and I'll use several different tools if I can. If I can do that without compromising IP or security or data. So I'll use several different tools, and just kind of compare, just for fun, just to do an audit of what does it say, what is it coming up with, and then I end up just kind of doing a lot of rewriting. I find, especially for leads, generative AI is not good at creating leads. I make sure to create my own lead that is based in human experience, metaphor, story, or data points. So, and then I think running the copy through Jasper Writer, just for grammar and consistency, is fair as well, after you've done your own rewrites. But I think, again, having your own content, having some data points, having a customer story, a video, something that you can draw from, I think is really important.
Yeah, so
Needing some control over the story at the get-go with the lead is what I prefer to do, so it doesn't look generic.
you mentioned that AI is not good at getting leads. What do you mean by that?
Creating a compelling lead, I would say. I think it's more like essay. I still feel like it's more like an essay writer rather than a compelling like news story writer or blog story writer. I find it's too generic. Now it's improving over time, and I think the more data you feed it, the better. But I find it takes a lot of effort, and sometimes rather than going through and saying changing the tone, changing the length, changing the style, I'll just write it myself.
Yeah, I
Not
think that's one.
others, if you're, it depends on who you're writing for and what you're writing. I mean, I think sometimes you get away with your first draft and keeping it kind of simple and straightforward. But for some things, I just, I want to make sure it has a good human stamp on it.
Yeah, that's kind of been my experience too, is that I will end up spending almost the same amount of time writing
Hmm.
it. I just use it as more like, hey, give me 5 ideas to rewrite this sentence, or give me a few analogies to help make this resonate a little bit more of like uh, an assistant that gives me some different ideas. Some of them are good, some of them are not.
So, yeah, and when we started doing this in the communications group, I'd sort of go one-on-one with folks and say, hey, let's try this out. And we found that what we were seeing was more something to react to. And we sort of laugh, say, look at the headline it generated. We can do something better. So I found it to be like, it kind of helped us raise our own bars with creativity, structure, analogy, more than, oh, look at what a wonderful headline this thing wrote. Sometimes it could surprise you, but I found it to be more of like, we could do better.
This is what
Um,
not to do.
well, that's yeah. And sometimes it's good. Sometimes you need that sparring partner. You need that.
Yeah.
You need something to react to, as I said, and I think that was a kind of our primary attitude toward it at first. We'd see, but then sometimes it would surprise you. Like I remember when we tried Ryder to write a press release. I said, look at the press release that Ryder did compared to, the one that our comms colleague did, and honestly, it was like, wow, this is pretty good. It's
Hmm.
pretty comparable to what a human would put together.
Yeah, it's interesting now to see like when you put blogs, white papers, things like that down in front of like blind testing, more and more people are not able to tell the difference as they're getting
Yeah,
better.
we actually did a workshop for our communications leaders where I gave them a bunch of social posts for tweets, and I asked them to, is it human or is it AI? And this is back in like, I don't know, February, March when this first came out. So it was really wonderful that everybody could kind of figure that out. Now today, I think the LMs are being tweaked. Everything's kind of adapting so quickly. I think it might even be harder today. I think in a year, who knows? But everything's going so fast. But I think it's so good to have a good foundation for writing, critical thinking, and make sure you test everything and don't rely on it wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. I think reliance on AI is something that you definitely don't want to get in that trap, and use it as a companion as opposed to, you know, doing your job.
Yeah, no, again, it's otherwise it will do your job. Otherwise, it will replace.
Exactly.
So again, I think the attitude to take is maintain the role of the supervisor. You're the human supervisor, right? You're managing AI. AI is your junior colleague, your intern, and you're really managing. You're offloading some tasks, but you're managing uh, and upgrading the work at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think my writing has gotten much better over time. I think I have one too that's I have a little sidekick that's a harsh blog critic that I'll just put it through and just rip it to shreds. Because I think sometimes when you like having that sparring partner, when you just give it to one of your colleagues, so like looks great, and you get very little feedback, and AI doesn't hold back.
What's the most useful thing you've used generative AI for yourself?
I think honestly, right now it has been in the marketing realm. It has been in the coding realm. So, for instance, I'm an
Wait,
engineer as
you
well.
wrong.
What was that?
Did you just say realm
I
twice?
did. I'm starting to sound like an
Yeah,
AI.
yeah, don't worry.
I
East
would say marketing first and more engineering. So using co-pilots as well. We also have an open source thing called Daisy that actually reads our code and analyzes it using OpenAI's APIs. So it understands the context of the code base it's working on, which has been amazing. I was able to, I think, too, one of the things that at my companies that's been really empowering is over this last year, I've seen um, people at my companies that have started to do things they never would have in a million years thought they would have done. I have, non-technical people doing, migration scripts using AI. I have, my assistant doing the images and, checking for proofreading the blogs using my harsh, my blog critic that checks for brand tone, voice. So being able to enable the team to just do different things has been really exciting.
Yeah, empowering your colleagues to do better work. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the GPTs for a minute. Did you have a
Yeah.
chance to play with those? A couple.
Absolutely. I make tons of, I've been making tons of GPTs. Uh, yeah.
So I embarked on I embarked on the realm. I tried creating one as a DreamWork co-pilot, and I fed it presentations I'd made, different things I'd written, blogs and things. And it took a long time to get it to train it on my content. It kept reverting back to its point of view, and I don't know if that was just it was just like hard coded to be secular. And I have a very different perspective on the topic, so I have a different bias. But I kept seeing it would lean into its own bias that was hard coded, which really annoyed me. So I finally it took quite a while. I finally got it to answer. I have my header questions and answering it the way I wanted with my content, but it did take quite a long time, which showed me that that actually the Chat GPT LLMs have a really definitive bias.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they do, especially when you're using the application layer of it. So one of the things that we built when this first came out was Answer AI. Which was allowing to do what we called them sidekicks, but essentially this being able to create these, use documents. And one of the things that I've actually found is that you're right. It definitely, when I'm creating GPTs, they tend to revert back to just, something different. They're hard to kind of really get the instructions to really dial in, and it doesn't always read the context as clearly as like some other like custom developed solutions.
Yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
interesting. It was an interesting experiment. I did notice just because of my content, particular, or if that was just kind of what people were experiencing. So good to know.
Yeah, I think some of the ones that I've created, so for like the personas architect ones that was helping me be creative. I also created one that just does meeting note taking. So I just upload my Zoom transcript and it just outputs the notes. That's been a useful one. So
Are any of those on the in the marketplace yet?
I don't think the marketplace is actually launched yet, but I'll definitely put some of my favorite ones in the description
Yeah, please
of
do.
the
Let's check them out.
yeah.
I thought,
That's interesting.
oh, sorry. I thought something for like time, finding spots in your calendar, like optimizing your calendar would be useful too.
Absolutely. I think that once you start hooking it up to some of these different tools and different areas, like I think everyone's going to really have their own personal assistant to be able to
I mean,
do
that's been the
so many
goal and the
things.
vision. And Pi AI is kind of the closest I've seen to a personal assistant. And I can't wait to see what Apple comes up with because, gosh, aren't you tired of asking Siri things and it's showing you what Wikipedia article?
I know. I tell Siri and also my at my Google Home, I'm like, you're going to be replaced very soon.
Yeah, I have a feeling they'll step it up, hopefully, cross fingers. But yeah, I mean, that's what we all need. I mean, and I, having worked with Watson, back in the day, I always thought, gosh, what we need a Watson personal assistant. We need a
Yeah.
consumer version of Watson. I mean, that won't ever happen, but it's something I think we all are ready for now. We all want. So whoever comes up with it is gonna kill it.
Yeah, one of the things that I realized when OpenAI came out with GPTs, so that was a big piece of what Answer AI did, and we're actually open sourcing it, is that I think that as these larger organizations, they can't have a monopoly on how we interact with these tools. Um, like for instance, right now you have companies acquiring megalithic companies like Broadcom acquiring VMware, or Microsoft kind of owning GitHub, and every single you kind of have this three-way race now between Google, Microsoft, um, Microsoft and OpenAI, and then you have kind of Apple coming in there. You have Anthropic. You have all these different tools. Where do you see kind of, you know, where this should go in the future? More consolidation, or kind of, where do you see this
Oh,
going?
big question. Well, if you look at religion,
Okay. Some
let's
people
pick
would say that AI is a religion for some people in in
uh,
Silicon Valley.
you have monotheism versus atheism or polytheism. So is monotheism a best model? If you look at a religious model, you take that perspective. I don't know. I think plurality is always good. I come from an, open standards, open source kind of background. And, at VMware, the ethos was around multi-cloud. Multi-cloud is the driver of innovation. And it's the really key part of innovating with Gen AI. So I think I stand firmly on interoperability, but choice and flexibility. But I can also see the appeal of having that kind of one thing. I can see why people might want that as well. I think just it's got to be easy. So I think having your device, which can sort of like give you choices for what you can use, is probably going to be great. But you can opt in for the device's, LLM or operating system too, to make it easier. And I'm sure that's on the horizon. But I think, given the way the world is, I think plurality of choice is always going to be probably uh, the deferred practice. But again, interoperability. Well, LLMs can talk to each other. That would be the ideal.
Yeah, I think interoperability is definitely key, especially with the different services. Plus, too, like you said, I mean, you even said earlier, like with ChatGPT, I wanted more secular responses than what it was giving you. So I think that there's always going to
I
be different
wanted
tastes for
less secular response.
less secular.
I wanted no secular responses because you could tell like who designed this. It was somebody without the knowledge of the mythopoetic world. They had no foreseeable. So that's why I prefer Pi, because Pi has like a little deeper, more liberal, I'd say, liberal arts education.
Interesting. Yeah, it's when you're thinking about models and you're thinking about them as like what they've been educated in, what they've been trained on,
Who trained them? Who trained
who
them?
trained them,
Mm-hmm.
whose ethics. I think, even just open sourcing the training data as opposed to the model. I think that what the data inputs are the most important pieces, because at the end of the day, the model is just numbers. The code is remarkably easy. It's the data that goes into them that I think we deserve to know. It's kind of like the ingredients in what you're putting into your body. It's the ingredients that you're now putting into your mind.
Well, kudos to IBM. They have always been kind of focused on the warning labels or the rest of the ingredients label for AI, and I think they're absolutely committed and leading in that area. So I really do appreciate all the mindful work that IBM has put into this.
What exactly what initiatives did they do that kind of they've
Well,
done to
what's
put in
next
this?
actually has an ingredient label, so you always know what the model was based on and trained on. So it's very they've been really addressing this sort of black box problem and really looking at data governance. Where's the data coming from? Data lineage. So they've been very transparent about it. So there's a lot online. But yeah, you can look at What's Next. I think that's a new element of What's Next just came out recently.
Okay.
So
Is
I would
that primarily consumer, or is that business?
enterprise.
Yeah.
It's AI for business. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you know, honestly, enterprises are going to continue to demand that whatever models they're using to be able to make their decisions. I think full transparency. I don't see that as much being asked for, or I believe it might be being asked for, but not as much in the consumer side.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's really surprising to me. Um, Looking ahead, what do you think you see as like the next big trend or like evolution in the intersection between AI and marketing? And like, how should companies be, preparing to leverage this if they haven't already?
Oh gosh. Well, multimodal, I think, just looking at the bringing elements of, voice, image, video, just all touch points, all senses involved to create better, I'd say, marketing experiences. But the trend is, if I could give advice, I mean, there's multiple things, but marketing organizations need to come together, decide what their focus points are, make sure they have ethics and policies in place for how to use AI, get an AI council together that's interdisciplinary, start meeting, define your parameters. Who do you want involved? What kind of use cases are you taking on? What kind of tools are you going to use? Make sure they're managed tools, that they're approved tools, and then set up managed use cases. Again, at VMware, we had 18, so you can do quite a lot and get results really quickly, and then make sure you demonstrate them to your leadership.
How do you get leadership? Because you mentioned that it started off with just like, hey, a message, and then all of a sudden, you had, C-level executive buy-in. How does, is that just through showing good ROI? How did you kind of get to that point?
The process steps in that I'm not exactly sure because I wasn't involved in the very beginning, but I know that they relatively quickly got the CMO on board to be the champion of the project. And then they ended up doing AI workshops for all of the leadership, VPs and above. So they had like a day of really education and training and talking about and trying to get them enrolled in, hey, bring this idea of building use cases with your departments together. But I did have the support of the leadership. I think also because we were approaching an acquisition, there was this real sense of like, hey, this is a great time to experiment, really build your skills, take some risks. So I think we were kind of in a unique position at VMware to really try some new things while we had that space to do that in a relatively low risk manner.
Yeah, I couldn't echo that more. Give this opportunity to try out AI, learn this tool. Like literally all the chips just got flipped over on the table like last year in this industry.
It's really amazing. Now there's, tons of people. I mean, if you looked at our Slack channel, every day somebody was getting a Jasper certification. I mean, the number of AI skilled employees coming out of VMware who are both going on to Broadcom or moving on to other opportunities is incredible. So I think now is a really great time to look at the talent coming out of VMware, especially in marketing, and to bring them on to help you get these things started with a great deal of experience.
Yeah. I think, would you have any advice for anyone you would give for like any professionals, looking to make the transition either, from what they're doing? Because, you went from being a journalist to now doing, marketing and technology. What would you, tell professionals looking to possibly make the change either in their own company or just completely altogether in what they're doing?
I mean, start learning. I think that the main thing is prioritize learning. So take a Friday afternoon and dedicate that, like calendar it, put in like 3 hours of AI learning and looked at LinkedIn. There's a lot of LinkedIn free learning modules on generative AI. There are also 2 programs that I took part in that I would recommend. One is the Regen AI for Communicators certification, and the other one is the Marketing AI Institute's Piloting AI for Marketers. Those are 2 great places to start. And those are 2 great organizations for people in marketing and comms to really get their hands on what AI means for their disciplines and also how to build an AI pilot and then all the tools that are out there and how to ethically use them and how to measure success. So I think those would be my 2 top recommendations. There's a ton of podcasts. Again, Marketing AI Institute has a really great podcast. I think they do weekly that helps people get up to speed on all of the trends very quickly. And they will always reference Ethan Mollick's lists and his videos and other people's content. So that's a good kind of starting point. And then just start following these leaders on LinkedIn.
Who are some leaders that you'd recommend following on LinkedIn?
Oh, Ethan Mollick, I just mentioned. Paul Rotzer from Marketing AI Institute and Ross Dawson. Yeah, I've known him forever. Known him for like back in my IBM days. Oh, you know who else is good? Yeah, Ross Dawson is great. I would also recommend the new AI newsletter from IBM. That's a great place to start. They'll send you things every couple of weeks. That's a really great resource. Dario Gil is hosting a new kind of series of videos around AI that I think is really easy to understand, and he's just really compelling. coming from being the head of research at IBM. So I would follow the AI newsletter. And again, I have to get the name of it. If you could hold on a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, my old manager actually helped launch that. It's the rise of generative AI. Oh, AI in action. So let me just edit this. So I would highly recommend people subscribe to the AI in Action newsletter from IBM, as well as the Marketing AI Institute's newsletter and LinkedIn.
Excellent. Those are all great. That's all great advice. People to and things to keep up because this field moves so quickly. It's just I've never in my 2 decades in technology seen something that just moves so quickly. And you mentioned like learning, getting in the process of learning is so important. And also to just taking some dedicated time to just play with the tools. I try to spend at least 10 minutes a day just writing with a tool. I try to always have like some little side project or some creative thing that I'm doing to just be able to try these new tools, because until you really get your hands on and start playing with them, you really don't know what they're both capable of and also to what they're not capable of, because it's very easy on some of these marketing that it'll do everything for you, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think creative play is great, just when you have that opportunity to do it, and might generate some ideas for your business too. So don't be afraid to do that. I'd say collapse that barrier, that silo between your work and your playtime, at least, and just consider it all valuable for everything you do.
And then finally, what excites you most about the future of AI, and where do you think we'll be in just 2 years?
That's hard to predict and that's the question everyone's trying to crack, right? I mean, as a nowist, I have to be focused on what's happening right now. But then at the same time, I do have to look at what's happening in the next 2 years. And I think that's the conundrum most companies are facing. If you haven't even tried, Chat GPT now, how are you going to be prepared for the Chat GPT next version? So I think what excites me is the prospect of how we can partner with AI in a mindful way. AGI is exciting and scary. I think looking at how AI models are developed and using that as a way to understand our own consciousness more. I think at the same time we begin to be more reliant on AI, we also need to, at the same time, develop our own inner work skills. So intuition, personal relationships, connection to nature. So I think it's going to be an interesting balancing act for humanity overall.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting, you used to say, what do you think 10 years out? Then I went 5 years out. Now it's like, I can't even imagine what it's going to be 2 years from now.
Well, I'll tell you
What,
one thing I am excited about is I think the potential for AI as a companion for humans who are lonely. There's probably a lot of value in that, because there's a lot of single people, there's a lot of elderly people, and I think AI can probably fill that need for human companionship and advice that maybe human relationships are failing at. So I think it could be a nice augmentation for people who just need someone to talk to.
or have that be, you mentioned, someone to talk to. I think one of the other ways that I use it is sometimes talking with your partner, sometimes being like, hey, holding it up to I have a little GPT of like, talking with your partner and talking with different things, and to just kind of hold yourself up to it and almost hold yourself accountable to is an interesting uh, use case, and kind of interpersonal, using it to improve interpersonal skills.
Absolutely. I'm sure by this time there's a nonviolent communication GPT. So how can we use it to train ourselves to communicate less violently and to build more compassionate bridges with each other? How can it help shift our mentality from one of competition and war to one of cooperation and peace? So those are the areas I think the AI could really excel at, is helping us be better humans,
Mm-hmm.
not just work
Yeah,
more
well,
efficiently and productively, but just be better.
absolutely. I think so much is, how do we, is put on the efficiency part, but Um, one thing that I wanted to do that I think would be pretty interesting was to train one model on nothing but like left, wing, source material from media and everything, and one on right, and then have them talk to each other and see if they can come to compromise. I think it would be interesting, or how they actually came to compromise. What are the things? I think that um, it's very interesting when you start thinking about these different use cases, when you take especially the emotion out of some of these hot button topics, where we could really make progress.
Yeah, no, we need to very quickly. So I'm hoping the AI becomes that human accelerator for a more ecological model, more rational, more environmentally conscious, to build a better world. And I've always believed that. I try to shy away from the negative tropes around AI and focus on the positive. And maybe it's because I was an early adopter. I played with 2XL as a child, so I've always been kind of friendly toward these things. And I've been trying to dispel all the myths of, AI being this horrible factor of society. So I mean, that's just my bias is more on the positive side, of course. But again, it depends on who's training it. So I think the more that we become more conscious and do our own work on improving our own ethics and our own relationships and our own connection to nature, and healing ourselves, the better our AI will be.
Yeah, I think, just to bring it full circle, like the story we tell, the story right now is being told of doom and gloom, and it's going to, destroy us all. But, we build and we do what typically the stories we tell. And I think
Yeah,
we
it
need to
self
be telling more
perpetuating.
stories of we need to tell more stories of positivity and how this can really elevate, so many people.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's about shifting the mindset and then shifting the narrative. So sometimes I think to shift the narrative, you have to create the new one.
hmm
So I look at the Buckminster Fuller scenario, So if you want to change the world, you really just have to live it or be it. Or if you look at manifestation principles, you really just kind of have to be the thing you want to be. You have to start acting like it, right? And being it. So that's my that's my
yeah.
personal philosophy.
So, and we're at the beginning of this. I mean, AI has been part of our lives for quite a while, but I think now is an inflection point, and those who are in this will make help tell that story. So,
Yeah,
well,
no,
thank
and
you
I hope
so much.
people who have both the experience with who are healing themselves and really conscious and really about inner work are also involved with AI, and they don't shy away from it. That they see that it's important to stay connected and engaged as opposed to being Luddites, because we need those people more. We need people who are really not just who are more broad minded. I think working in these systems. So for anybody who's in engineering, I would suggest they broaden their horizons and learn about different things too, so they can bring a more of a lived experience to the table, as to opposed to just that engineering mindset.
Yeah, you have to stay curious. I think curiosity, you now have a nice assistant that can tell you all about philosophy and any
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I look forward to more people experiencing Pi AI. I think that one's the gold standard.
Cool. I'll definitely check that out. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jennifer. I really appreciate the conversation, and good luck. Good luck with everything you're doing with the AI Council.
Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to see it living on and continuing to have an impact. They're actually going to be doing a meetup in a couple of minutes in the Bay Area. So there's a
Oh,
lot
excellent.
with the we and they are doing to really kind of spread the knowledge and the experience, which is so needed right now. And I think it's, anybody listening should really take advantage of it. Find a former VMware Marketing AI Council member, talk to them, try to get them get something set up to like pass on the wisdom.